So we have received so many questions, so that's why you saw already I was making the other sessions a bit longer, and I will do exactly the same thing now with the interoperability Q&A. Alessandro, you know, on the left side is Jan Hackfeld. He is head of research. The Lisk community knows him already, but whoever is not familiar with him now is a very important figure together with the whole research team in figuring out how we want to achieve Lisk interoperability. And for you, Jan, is also the first question from Anne Move. He would like to know what function will the LSK token have on sidechains? What will it be used for?
Yeah, Alessandro already touched on this question in his presentation. So all fees are paid in Lisk tokens. So this is kind of the default functionality that you can use Lisk for. And apart from that, it's to a big part up to the sidechain developer what else they want to use Lisk tokens for. So if I think of some of the community projects like Lisk Bike, for example, maybe they just want that users pay the bike rental in Lisk. So Lisk could be used just also as the payment token in the sidechain. So the idea why Lisk is supported by all sidechains is that onboarding for new users should be easy. So every user of the Lisk ecosystem should just have to hold Lisk and can transfer it to a sidechain and then should be ready to use that sidechain immediately without having to go through a complex process of having to buy some special kind of sidechain tokens. And how exactly then the mechanism is, and that totally depends on the use case. But the basis is somehow that you use Lisk for fees, and also the cross-chain updates that Alessandro has explained that are submitted to the main chain. Of course, these are transactions that have to pay fees in Lisk. And also the cross-chain updates in the other directions, they are transactions that also pay fees in Lisk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, because I was so excited to hear what the community thinks about it. There was a bit of a confusion if the LSK token will be used only as a fee for the cross-chain transactions or for any transaction, but I think you explained it well. It will be basically the fee token for any kind of transaction, the cross-chain transaction, but also any transaction on the sidechain itself, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And this kind of answers already the next question, which I would like to point to you, Alessandro. So the user with the nickname MyFreeSetbox would like to know how we are going to add utility to the LSK token, and especially important value beyond just voting for delegates. Can you shed some light on this question?
Yeah, this connects nicely actually with what Jan just said. Basically, any sidechain will use LSK tokens for their fees, and this alone would mean that LSK tokens will be used more, increasing their value. But any new use that is developed by sidechain developers that use LSK tokens as utility token will again, add something more beyond the voting and the holding on main chain, if you want. And again, as Jan mentioned before, at some point, if a sidechain wants to actually connect to the main chain and participate in the interoperability, they will have to send these cross-chain updates, which again use the LSK token. So all in all, interoperability, again, LSK tokens will be used across the whole ecosystem, and in total, they will acquire value just because any new idea that developers will put forward will just become, a new way to use tokens.
Mm-hmm. Just for myself, as a comment also, I've done an ICO in my life already, and I think it's pretty hard, especially on the legal side. So I think what we are trying to encourage developers with is also to just use the LSK token as a means of payment or as a means for the utility aspects of a sidechain within their blockchain application. With that, they don't have to bother too much with exchanges. They don't have to bother too much with having their own token. And with that, maybe legal constructs somewhere in the world, which causes a lot of work and headaches. So there's always a focus on that from our side as well. The next question is from Unit again. Jan, I would like to ask this to you. So the interoperability we are building, and that's why we called it the Lisk interoperability, is focused on Lisk sidechain, so within our blockchain application platform only. And he would like to know if we are planning to build bridges to Ethereum, Cosmos, Polkadot, or other blockchain application platforms to benefit from these different networks as well.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic that we also consider for the future. But first, we now want to get the Lisk interoperability ready and deployed on mainnet. But afterwards, this is definitely a topic that we will look into in more detail. I think with our interoperability solution in place, it will be also give community members the opportunity to develop projects that build bridges to existing blockchains. For example, I could think of a sidechain that implements a bridge to Bitcoin and creates some wrapped Bitcoin that could then be used in the Lisk ecosystem, and which is maybe collateralized and has certain security guarantees. So we will definitely look into this, but also community members are encouraged to look into this topic. And I think the Lisk interoperability will already give a good base for developing projects that implement bridges to other existing blockchains.
Mm-hmm. I mean, looking at our SDK and looking at the interoperability solution, at least the first glimpse which was provided today, I guess the sky's the limit. Everyone could implement anything, like Shu was also saying. Really, really exciting time, and I look forward to see what actually will be implemented. Super cool. Okay, next one from Lemmy. Alessandro, what if you transfer LSK to a sidechain and that sidechain goes down indefinitely for whatever reason, like it's not available anymore, it's dead? What happens then? Are the LSK tokens lost?
Great question. So without going into technical details that also we cannot disclose right now, we're definitely told about that, and the LSK tokens will not be lost. There will be some main chain protocol to actually redeem these tokens and bring them back to the main chain. Maybe part of the reason for why we want to include the sidechain information into the main chain with a cross-chain update is actually to be able to redeem these tokens back to the main chain.
So I was mentioning that the Lisk blockchain will act somewhat like a directory for all the sidechains. So we know basically all the sidechains because they have to be registered on the main chain. And you're saying then there will definitely be a mechanism to retrieve tokens, LSK tokens, which are stuck on a sidechain, but the sidechain is not working anymore, back into the Lisk ecosystem.
Right, that's a very good analogy because LSK tokens are the tokens of the Lisk main chain, right? So the Lisk main chain will always keep track of where the LSK tokens are in the ecosystem. So if you remember before, I mentioned that a sidechain will have an account on main chain, and in this account we also store what is the total balance, for example, that is stored, that has been sent to the sidechain.
All right, that sounds really good and secure. I guess a very important aspect if you're handling multiple blockchains, which are, well, after all, immutable, right? All right, the next one to you, Jan. It's from Anonymove again. I need to decipher a little bit the question. So he would like to know who approves the transactions between the main chain and the sidechain, a sidechain and the main chain, or maybe even going from sidechain to another sidechain. Will it be the delegates of the mainnet, or will it be the delegates of the sidechain? And what happens when the mainnet goes down? So can you shed some light on that? Who approves cross-chain transactions, and what happens if the mainnet goes down?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So first of all, like if you want to send a cross-chain transaction, in the end, it's not much different than a normal transaction. So if you send a normal transaction to the Lisk mainnet, I wouldn't say approve, but the delegates just have to include it in a block, and at some point this block will be finalized. So the same will be true for a cross-chain transaction. Maybe you send 10 Lisk to a sidechain, you send this transaction to the Lisk main chain, it will be included by some main chain delegates, and after it's finalized, then a cross-chain update gets created automatically, and the sidechain could include it, and the sidechain is then also just somehow forced to process this cross-chain transaction. And the cross-chain updates, so as Alessandro explained, the cross-chain transactions, they are put together in cross-chain updates, and the cross-chain update in itself is again just like a transaction. So again here the sidechain delegates, so or in general validators, maybe the sidechain uses a proof of authority consensus, just included in a block, and then this transaction is processed. Basically the mechanism is just the same as for other transactions. Then to the second part of the question, which was what happens if the main chain is down? So first of all, the main chain is decentralized for a reason. There are like 101 active delegates. We also have standby delegates. So it's an always-on network. So maybe a few delegates are down for a while, but they also can't be down for a very long time, because with the new DPoS system, we also have a mechanism in place to ban delegates which are offline for too long. So this is like very unlikely. And even if the main chain would be down for a while, or maybe there's just a hard fork happening and maybe just 1 or 2 hours it's not working, the sidechains would be independent. They can still process transactions, internal transactions, but also cross-chain transactions. And what happens is just that maybe you send 10 Lisk from a sidechain back to the main chain, and this would be processed by the sidechain, but as the main chain is maybe doing a hard fork or just for some reason it's actually offline, it then wouldn't react on this cross-chain update immediately, but just with a bit of delay. So as soon as the main chain would be back online and process transaction, it will also process the cross-chain updates, and therefore there's no problem at all. Yeah.
You mentioned that if the main chain would be down, the sidechains are independent and could still work. So that actually also holds true that if the main chain reaches its transaction capability limit, and it would be very expensive for transactions to be processed on the main chain, how we're seeing it with many different blockchains in the ecosystem, especially at high prices. It means essentially that the sidechain, and with that the blockchain application, is unaffected by that. Is that true to say?
Yes, so the sidechains, the internal transactions and also the cross-chain transactions are processed independently. That's how you also gain all the scalability. And of course, the sidechains have an interest to post these cross-chain updates frequently, but maybe if the main chain is very busy and the cost for posting it is too high, then they could also wait for a few hours, and that would only mean that the cross-chain transactions take a bit more time. Mm-hmm. But the processing of the sidechain would not be affected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. And I think with the implementation now of one of the LIBs, the transaction throughput per chain is set to a value of around 1 million transactions per day right now. Is that true?
Yeah, that's will be the case for the Lisk main chain, and also I think the default in the Lisk SDK. But of course, as a sidechain developer, you could customize it if you maybe choose to have higher hardware demands on your sidechain. You may choose, I don't know, 10 times more transactions. I think also now that we move to an embedded database, it should definitely be possible to put this limit a lot higher. Yeah.
So we have, thanks to probably our code optimization, but also our choice of consensus algorithms, quite a high throughput already. The developer could set it even higher. On the main chain, I think we stayed with that number in order to keep decentralization more easy, because the blockchain grows just a certain amount of gigabytes every year this way, right?
Yeah.
But really excited to see that. The most successful blockchain applications in the entire industry right now just reach around like a few 100,000 transactions per day. So that's definitely possible. But then again, they are on like one chain, and in our case, it would be split. Super cool. All right, next one is from Corben. Thank you so much for the chocolate you sent to us as a present for the new office and for the Lisk Center. It was dangerously delicious. Alessandro, he wants to know who decides the fees with the transfer from sidechain to main chain and to another sidechain, or from main chain to sidechain. Who decides the fees for that?
Right. So for cross-chain transactions in general, we distinguish these two cases. The first one for cross-chain balance transfers, where the fee is just set to a protocol constant, meaning that this fee will be fixed and verified by main chain. It will be most likely very low, on the same level of a normal balance transaction, let's say. And every sidechain will accept this fee. So every sidechain will accept a cross-chain balance transfer with that fee. For custom transactions instead, that will be, again, customizable. As any normal custom transactions, developers are able to set the fee to whatever value they want. Of course, if we're looking at a sidechain to sidechain cross-chain custom transaction now, meaning that both chains actually agreed on the protocol, right? So both chains know how to process this custom transaction, and then both chains agree on what is a valid fee for the cross-chain transaction.
All right. So a lot of flexibility for the developers, but of course, whatever happens on the main chain is part of the dynamic fee system.
Yes, that is always true.
Okay, cool. Back to you, Jan. Very interesting question, which will probably highlight the power of our blockchain application platform later on. He would like to know, do custom cross-chain transactions allow you to transfer custom tokens? Like, for example, he would like to know, could you transfer an NFT or various other tokens which were created on a sidechain between multiple sidechains or onto different sidechains? Is that possible?
Yes, that will definitely be possible. That's also something we are currently researching. We are researching some standards for this kind of interoperability. Alessandro was in his presentation presenting the Lisk token transfer. That's something that all sidechains will have to support. And then there was this general cross-chain transaction. And one type of cross-chain transaction could be an NFT transfer. And we also want to have some good standard for this. And this would be something that sidechains could opt in. So not every sidechain would have to support it. Maybe for some sidechains it just doesn't make sense. Sidechains could choose to support this standard and then also store non-fungible tokens from different other sidechains. For example, a decentralized exchange, for that one, it would make sense to support this. But similarly, also for non-fungible tokens, we want to develop a standard so that also fungible tokens can be transferred throughout the ecosystem. But again, this would be more of an opt-in. So like the default would be only that every sidechain supports the Lisk token transfer.
Mm-hmm. So all the power basically to the developers of the sidechains.
Yeah.
I think this shows that we're aiming to become really an interoperable blockchain application platform, that it's possible to do that if the developer wishes to do so. All right, last question from Dev1. I saw your comment on Twitter, so you earned your goodie bag. Don't worry about that. Alessandro, so he's saying that every user will have the same Lisk address everywhere. So on the main chain and then every sidechain. So he's asking if he should register or create this address always on the main chain.
Right, so that's correct. Users will have the same address everywhere. They will just need to remember one keeper to operate in any chain. As by register, as you mentioned, I think you mean creating an account. And in general, wherever you are in the ecosystem, you will need some Lisk tokens to do stuff, right? So you may have these Lisk tokens transferred directly to your account from another account on main chain, or you can first receive these Lisk tokens on main chain and then transfer them to your account on the sidechain. That's up to you. So there is no rule for that, just that you have some Lisk tokens to actually participate into the ecosystem.
So I understand it correct? Like one address corresponds to one key or one passphrase anyway, doesn't matter where, on which chain. That's just falling back on the cryptography we're using as a default. So it doesn't matter really where this address receives a token first.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, pretty cool. All right, that was the last question. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.